I remember as a kid being kind of fascinated by traffic, particularly the way people use the human circulatory system as an analogy when talking about it. You heard this a lot on the morning news. Congestion, bypasses, arteries feeding the heart of downtown. It was like each car was a blood cell moving through the veins of the city. Well, what I didn't get as a kid, and that I definitely feel now, is the very real adult pressures pushing all of those cars through that system. Robert Frost wrote that, "I took the road less traveled by, and that's made all the difference." It's an interesting idea that just by doing things your own way, you could change how you experience your life. And I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like that might be a message that people need to hear right now. I mean, you might not change the world, but you might change yours. And that's what this show celebrates. People who, in spite of social pressures, economics, family responsibilities, have still managed to do their own thing, make their lives just that much bigger. Every month we're going to look at a different person or group who's done just that, found a way to do things a little differently, made their own lives a little more interesting with no help from anyone. It's just their own initiative. Well, my name's Terry Pounds. Thank you very much for joining me, and this is A Microscopic Life. Protests. If you include mobs with pitchforks and torches, it might just be one of the oldest forms of public political discourse. I wondered why some people did it while most of us just stayed home and swore at our TV. So when the Republican National Convention was slated to take place in St. Paul, and wildly varied groups scheduled marches and demonstrations, I knew that I had to take a closer look and make it the subject of the first episode. We're going to look at two groups. One is Veterans for Peace. They're an anti-war group that scheduled a protest march for the 31st, which is the day before the actual Republican convention. It was to start here at the state capitol and go to the Excel Center, the site of the convention. The second group that we're going to look at was put together by a conservative blogger, Joe Repia, to counter the much larger anti-war march that was taking place on the 1st, while sending a message to our troops that they supported what we were doing in Iraq.
Age 26, Arlington, Texas, died in Iraq February 4th, 2008.
We will remember you!
Unknown Iraqi boy, approximately age 8.
We will remember you!
The organization that started off this activity at the protest was the Veterans for Peace, which is a nationwide organization, but we have a local Red Wing chapter, and we started that maybe 6 years ago.
My name is Bill Haberdock. I live here in Red Wing, and I'm with the Veterans for Peace, Chapter 115. and we're working on our project for the march in St. Paul, just preceding the Republican National Convention. We're constructing our tombstones, which we will use in a silent march.
My name is Mary. I moved here about 2.5 years ago from Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I had been very active up there and loud and engaged, you know, with a group and with other groups together. And I was looking for something down here when I moved.
It evolved from the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, which dates it. And it's an organization that has developed a more inclusive membership than the Vietnam vets. And it includes what we call associate members who are not veterans, but people who are against war and who espouse nonviolence.
No, I was not in the armed forces. You can join as an associate member if you believe in the cause and believe in what our mission statement. Anybody can join Veterans for Peace. There's kind of a running joke that I'm an associate member. I was not a veteran, but I'm a veterinarian, so I'm a vet, sort of.
We have a statement of purpose, which actually we read at each meeting, and it includes the goals we have of eliminating war and the method of nonviolence which we promote. And some of our veterans are really still dealing with a lot of internal violence, so that's not an easy concept to always put into practice.
Our group has been protesting this war ever since before it started, and we just felt that we had to do more than just stand on a street corner and protest every once a week. Of course, a lot of us have been doing more than that too. Some of us have gone to Washington, some have gone to St. Paul or Minneapolis for protests, and we write editorials. We got involved in politics, trying to get peace candidates endorsed, which has so far been rather difficult. But we just want to make a statement, and because I don't think the population in America really understands what the costs of war are, and that's what we're going to try and show them.
Are there instances when you feel war is an appropriate response? I know that's a tough one to answer.
It's more than tough because it involves a personal response as well as an organizational response. And the statement by the organization of Vets for Peace is the elimination of war. And there are many of us who have gradations of feelings about that. I was 6 years old during World War II, and that was always taught us to be the good war. And that was the time when Hitler was overthrown. And over a period of years, my idea has been that some wars may have been necessary. They weren't good, and it would be too bad if they couldn't be prevented in the future. But possibly there was no choice at the time when the wars occurred, that things were that desperate and bad that they had to happen. However, that's not the statement of Vets for Peace. The idea is war, an end of war.
Well, to be honest, our leader, David Harris, actually came up with a design, because they do a similar thing at the School of America's March. Very similar thing, so it's kind of an offshoot from that. I've never participated in that event, but David Harris has been to quite a few of them.
Well, what we planned was a march that would come very early in the protests against the war and at the Republican National Convention. Veterans for Peace had its national meeting, as we've talked about before, which was in Bloomington, Minnesota, and that took place at the end days of August. And so on August 31st, Sunday, which was the last day of that meeting and the first day or the day before the RNC, we decided to hold our march. And the march would be an effort to set a tone of nonviolent protest and to express a nonpartisan approach to the war. That is, we took advantage of having the Republican convention there, but we really weren't opposing Republicans or Democrats per se. What we were doing was opposing war. And we felt that it's just as this war deserves bipartisan blame for it. We take the view that war is an overriding issue that needs to be regarded as nonpartisan. So what we did was to plan a march which would go from the state capitol to the Xcel Energy Center where the Republican convention is taking place. And it would be a silent protest where each marcher was given a little cardboard cutout tombstone with a photograph on it of a dead soldier or of a dead Iraqi civilian. And we tried to get more or less an equal showing of both, although we realize that there are many more Iraqi civilians have died from this and suffered from this than our own troops. But we wanted to make something that would appeal to everyone as an expression of just that this war is tragic, and that the first thing we need to do is to recognize that. And so our effort was to give people something very dignified and sober at the beginning of this very loud and sometimes violent convention. We had at the back of it, you might recall, a group of people dressed in orange jumpsuits and black hoods, and they symbolized the Guantanamo Bay prisoners who were tortured. And so just as we oppose war, we oppose torture of any kind, regardless of the excuses that have been made for it. We probably had about 500 people on this march, and we're a chapter of only about 20. But we were joined by a number of the veterans from the conference, and also by lots of people from other organizations, the Women Against Military Madness and the Code Pink organization and the United for Peace and Justice organization, which is a huge one out of New York, and various others from the Twin City area. So yeah, I think it was a teaching moment.
So when we do this civil disobedience, we're going to signal our willingness to pay a little tiny price. It's a very small one. You can bet they're going to be much too nice to us.
And we had decided we wanted to do a civil disobedience action to demonstrate the extreme opposition we felt to the support of militarism and war.
If you want to continue to follow the route that they planned for us, it's going straight down 7th Street here until you come to the public speaking platform. So anybody wants to follow us, feel free. Make sure you're all right. And those of us who do a civil disobedience are going to reach the place where the police stop us, and we'll simply tell them we're not stopping.
Taking the same lesson that was that goes back to Thoreau and to Gandhi and to Martin Luther King, we felt that it's time to do more than just kick and scream and yell. So we felt that we wanted to demonstrate that some laws, and this law which has made this war take effect, are bad laws, and we don't respect them. And so we had told the police ahead of time, and they knew what we were going to do. Ultimately, there were 9 of us who got down to this area where there were fences, and there was one that the police had discovered just as we were getting there, so that a bunch of them ran up from the inside of the fenced area trying to push the fence in place, and we're kind of leaning against it on the other side. And the police are saying, "You need to do this," and we're saying, "I'm sorry, we're just not going to do this." And And while we were pushing the fence, we were worrying because it was leaning on them, and we were afraid that it would fall on them. And it's a heavy fence, and we really don't want to see anybody get hurt. And turning around, here was one of the gates that was up off the ground about 1.5 feet. So we ran over there, and all of us 9 people squeezed in under this gate instead. So there we were inside, and that was our action. There were immediately a pretty large number of police with face shields and batons held upwards surrounding us and not speaking to us, and that was not unexpected. And their role was to not be cooperative, of course, and our role was to be nonviolent but insistent. And so we started by talking to them and then singing to them, and ultimately their leader, who was one of the St. Paul from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, came up and informed us that we were under arrest, and they recognized that we were pretty safe people. They put handcuffs on us, but in front, which is much more pleasant, and surprisingly gently. Actually mine was pink, which I thought was kind of common. But then they took us in paddy wagons, and we went to the place where the law enforcement center, where they had set up this huge enclosed jail area, and that too had a lot of security involved. We did want press coverage and visual imagery coverage as well, if possible. And actually, we did. Some people came up from everything from the New York Times to public radio, and we had a lot of interviews. I think an equal important part of it was for people to be able to express the utter revulsion at war for their own sake, to understand that real change has to become a grassroots effort, and it's not so much to expect that we change our leaders as that we get rid of our leaders. The ones who oppose dealing with things in a humane and nonviolent way, ultimately we would like to see the American people become less violent. We'd like to see the support of a culture of less violence, and one where people will pursue change through peaceful means. And so our hope is to educate ourselves and develop our own internal equilibrium, and to set an example for others. And hopefully this is something that can spread. When I was in the service, it was in the 65 through 67, and I had enlisted in the Air Force, and I felt very patriotic, and it was a time where I didn't really appreciate what was going on in Vietnam. I just felt good about going in, and I was a surgeon, a young surgeon. I had 2 years of my residency after my internship, and I decided to take that time and enlist. And so I was never sent overseas. I was sent to Arizona and was the surgeon at a small base there, and treated a lot of people, and had a chance to witness a lot of the returning veterans, as well as some of the effects of the war in Vietnam on civilians there. And increasingly I saw the pictures from Vietnam, and I went to Walter Reed and attended a conference where they showed the medevac hospitals, where there were the primary hospitals where they had little kids with napalm burns lying alongside of American GIs who stepped on these shit-smeared punji sticks that gave them terrible infections. And it was obvious the absurdity of war, and I became, over a period of time, increasingly converted to believe that war is not a solution to anything. Oh, I find it very fulfilling. I find it a way of expressing a love for people. The tragedy is that right here and right now, there's so many people suffering that shouldn't be, that are dying that shouldn't be, and it's not just luck, it's the way we've structured our world. And so even though I'm patient and I get a lot of fulfillment, I'm also, I have a rather tragic outlook on the world, because I see, you know, my life has been treating suffering. That's what a doctor does, hopefully, and I see an awful lot of suffering that's just not necessary. So I'm not denying that some things happen because of bad luck, but in my opinion, an awful lot happens because of human error.
All right, well, I want to thank you very much for this time, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Terry.
Yo no puedo callar, no puedo pasar indiferente ante el dolor de tanta gente. Yo no puedo callar, no puedo callar. Me van a perdonar, amigos míos, pero yo tengo un compromiso. Que tengo que cantar la realidad, which means that I have to sing the truth. And that's what we have to do.
Now, before we look at the second group, I want to take a moment to remind you that these two groups were not actually protesting each other. The March by Veterans for Peace took place on the 31st, and Joe Reppia's counter-protest took place on the 1st against a much larger anti-war march. Now, their ideological opposition to each other is obvious, but I wanted to make that point before we continue.
When I returned from Vietnam in 1971, it was the height of the Vietnam anti-war protests. You had John Kerry giving testimony in 1970, I believe it was, at Congress. My fellow soldiers were being called baby killers, were being called all kinds of names, spit on, and I vowed at that time when I came home and witnessed this kind of activity. When I was out processing, when I first got into the United States on the West Coast, I was told, change out of uniform, get into civilian clothes and fly home. Don't wear your uniform. You could, you know, get into an altercation. And I couldn't understand that. You know, my father didn't have to do that when he came home from World War II. My uncles didn't have to do it. They wore that uniform proudly, and I did too. And if somebody wanted to come up and say something, my response was always the same. You're entitled to your opinion, but I've been there and you're wrong. I can tell you, you know, you're wrong. What we're doing is right. Well, I'm just a blue-collar kid that grew up in the steel mill town of Gary, Indiana. Managed to obtain a scholarship at Western Michigan University with their ROTC department. And in 1969, after 4 years of college, I graduated and became a regular Army second lieutenant in the infantry. In 1970, I shipped over to Vietnam as an infantry lieutenant, served with the now extremely famous 2nd Battalion, 506 Parachute Regiment, the Band of Brothers Regiment from Tom Hanks' HBO movie. Also served with the 2nd 17th Cavalry Alpha Troop, the second portion of my year in Vietnam. And so came home, and the Army sent me off to flight school to become a helicopter pilot. In Desert Storm, I flew helicopters with the 1st Infantry Division, Big Red 1, of historical World War II fame as well.
All right.
Then initially retired in 1998. And Then along came 9/11, and 9/11, of course, I had quite a few friends in the Pentagon. I knew some of the people that were killed there. 12,000 U.S. Army retirees within 30 days of 9/11 volunteered to come out of retirement. They ended up only bringing back 350 of those volunteers, and I was brought back in 2004 at the age of 58. Served again with the famous 101st Airborne Division and Air Assault down in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Again, the division I was with in Vietnam, and went ahead and deployed to Iraq in 2005. And at the end of September 2006, at the age of 60, I mustered out. As the country was preparing itself to go to war in Iraq, there were a number of signs that started popping up throughout the Twin Cities stating no war for oil, no war in Iraq. And my wife and I became quite concerned that that was not showing our men and women, who are all volunteers in our military, the type of support that we felt they should be shown. Having been intimately involved with the bringing Iraqi refugees to the United States after the Gulf War in 1991, we decided we'd make 250 lawn signs and pass them out on a corner. And they said, they had the American flag on them, and they said in big red letters, "Liberate Iraq, support our troops, call your congressperson." Well, what started off as just something that my wife and I planned on doing, we suddenly were bombarded with people that wanted to become involved, people who wanted to make donations. So over the next 10 weeks, Deb and I produced 30,000 lawn signs strictly on donations. Interesting enough, 3 weeks into the sign campaign, we had so many death threats from the so-called peace crowd that we were given bulletproof vests to wear when we were in public, and I was provided a concealed carry permit before concealed carry became law here in Minnesota. It's interesting that one individual was tried in Hennepin County, or I'm sorry, in Dakota County, for his comments. So once again, we had people that we'd never known that came forward and offered to help. So we established a small group called the Minnesota Coalition, Support Our Troop Coalition. And those people today, most of them are very close friends of Deb and I.
I met Joe through Vets for Freedom, and I'm also a veteran of the Iraq conflict, 2005-2006. Today I'm just helping Joe Repia and other individuals hand out signs to support the war on terror and let people know that we want to finish the job on the war on terror and keep the fight on the enemy.
So looking at the RNC event, you're a delegate there, but you've also...
Again, a delegate.
You've also organized a, what would you call it, a counter-protest or a demonstration?
No, to organize something I'd have to have a permit. What we have done is we have printed up thousands of signs that say "Victory over Terrorism," has the American flag underneath it, and then underneath that, "Let our soldiers win." And we've passed out about 1,800 of those signs already.
Okay.
And we have a reprint that's going on now. On September 1st, 11:30 in the morning, we're going to organize a bunch of people to carry a bunch of signs down to the corner of 5th Street and 7th Street in St. Paul, which is the northwest corner of the XL Center, and it's also the turnaround point for the anti-war parade or protest march that's going to be done that day. And we believe, depending on who you talk to, they're claiming they'll have 25 to 50,000 protesters. From the looks of the crowd in Denver, they're running more like 10 to 15,000 protesters. But who knows, maybe more will come out for the Republican National Convention than the Democratic one. Although, you know, it's hard to say, you know, geez, who wants to pass up a chance of going to Denver, for crying out loud? But anyhow, we have the constitutional right to stand on the sidewalk and hold any sign we want. First Amendment gives us that right, it's freedom of speech. And so we don't need a permit. It's not an organized event. We just sort of put it out on some blogs, and lo and behold, people started showing up wanting signs, and that's what we're going to do. As a matter of fact, we're going to take it one step further, and I've encouraged everybody to show their Minnesota nice by not speaking to the protesters, only smiling and holding their signs and maybe a small American flag if they have it, and just stand there and hold your sign and smile.
This is cool, man.
We're hoping thousands of Minnesotans will be standing there holding our signs and waving the flags and showing support to our military. This is not a political thing. This is a support to our military thing. There is absolutely no Republican money behind this. This is strictly donations from people and efforts by people who want to show their support to our military and support to their mission, which is defeating our enemies in the war on terror.
What brought me to this position on the war is the way the war was covered by the mainstream media. They weren't covering the whole story. They're only covering the explosions that Al-Qaeda and the insurgents in Iraq were causing and the turmoil in Iraq. And they weren't covering the other things. It's not balanced coverage. They weren't covering all the good things that the soldiers were doing to help the people of Iraq. And, you know, the Iraqi people are good people, and they deserve freedom, and they deserve liberty, and we have to stick it out and win that war, which it looks like we're doing right now.
Is part of your intention also to say something to the anti-war crowd, or?
Well, they can draw any conclusion they want. You know, I've fought 3 wars so that they can have their right to voice their opinion and have their right to free speech. But I also, and the people that hopefully will be on the sidewalk holding signs and waving the flag, they have their right of free speech and a right to express their opinion as well. So, and it can be done in a peaceful manner, and that's why I say I have no animosity towards anti-war protesters as long as they keep it peaceful. They have their right to voice their opinion.
Won't you tell that to the babies that grows up in life while they're in this crowd and Lord and their dad is dying, in this case their mommy, we support our troops here in this I can feel the American love! Love American war, people!
Kane votes against the troops 11 times in a row. Yeah, make a dumbass face. Someday you'll stop being an mass destruction, they're there. We just have to find them. They're there somewhere. Katrina didn't happen. Neither did the Holocaust. It didn't happen. We have to find them. They're there. WFDs are right there. There are weapons of mass destruction. We gotta find where they are.
Who taught you that? Where'd you learn that? Did your teachers teach you that? Did your mama teach you that? Oh, you're a liar, man. One sick puppy.
Yeah, I do. This is my message that I want the protesters to know, is that as a soldier in Iraq, we were serving everyone in America. Black people, white people, gay people. even people that are in prison, because we're supporting the rule of law. And that's what keeps America free. And if you think, basically, that's what the soldiers doing in Iraq and in the war on terror, is making sure that we do have liberty, we do have freedom for all Americans, and that to watch other people suffer and be oppressed is not, you know, the right thing to do as an American, in my opinion.
I went to the Spanish-American War. Where do you want to go?
How about Native Americans?
Native Americans, I agree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. They were absolute genocide. They were very poorly treated. We broke every treaty 100% with you. Also go with you on slavery, but go with you on the way the Japanese were interned. There's a balance on that, and that's all the people we freed. Who are these people that need the people that we freed? Who are the people that need food around the world? We
don't get them food. I think we need to look this up.
We have sent more food and more charitable things to
That's a lie.
people
Hold on. Wait, let me tell you
any other country. We are the greatest force for good in the world.
That's a lie. Here's why. We say we're going to send over stuff, but we never do, and that's a fact. Look it up in
You ever heard the Marshall Plan? Ding ding.
You bring up one thing.
The Marshall Plan wasn't one thing. It was huge.
How they marginalized, moved, disenfranchised American Indians and killed them. Yeah, this nation is built on taking away resources from Native people. We did it first in Native Americans, we did it in Latin America, we did it in Southeast Asia, and now we're doing it in Central Asia. No, because it's determined by the majority. No, I'm going to be one of them. Yeah, we did in 2000, and we're going to sure do it in 2008. I'm a vote, I'm an election judge. I'm a devout Christian. Well, you can't be a devout Christian. You can't? You have flawed logic. Yeah, really. Tell me when Jesus sent his troops in to slaughter the Romans. Did you read the Bible? Never read the Bible. What can possibly kill the billion this year? Abortion. Thank you.
Obama wants to abort everybody and anybody.
Well, you got a good little clip there. And that is, well, the way it is, unfortunately. Good night, conservative. Thank you. Thank you. I don't think you guys realize what you just did. I think when Minnesota see the circus on TV, they're going to be like, what?
Your critics might suggest that what you're asking people to do is unconditionally support any war that our troops become involved in, any war that our government chooses to send them to. Do you feel that that's what you're doing, or do you see their point of view on that?
Well, I see their point of view on that. However, our critics have to understand this. We have an all-volunteer military. They step forward, they raise their hand, they take the oath to defend the Constitution and to obey the orders of the President of the United States. They don't get to choose where they go to war and where they have to lay their life on the line. They go where they're told to go by whoever is sitting in the Oval Office at the time. Republican, Democrat, or Independent, it doesn't matter. Unless you want to go back to a totally draft army where everybody serves, regardless of their background. Everybody serves in a draft military. There's only one thing we can do, and that is support our men and women when war begins. I've heard it said by many politicians, Democrats and as well as Republicans, that the argument over the troops going into harm's way should stop the minute the bullets start flying or at the water's edge, as I've heard it referred to. And I thoroughly believe that. We can't have a volunteer military any other way. We can't have the luxury of picking and choosing as a population what wars we like and what wars we don't like once those men and women go into battle. We should rally behind them and support them 100%.
When I was in Iraq rolling down the routes and the roads, I felt at times that guys like John Murtha and other people that were against the war were encouraging the insurgents to kill us. And that has, you know, real deep emotional and, you know, implications for me, for my country to, you know, believe that my fellow Americans are encouraging evil people to kill me and my fellow soldiers.
Bring them home! 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 Bring them home!
Saying you support the troops, but not their mission, is like saying you support your spouse, but not your marriage.
Or, I love the Vikings, I just don't want them to play football. It makes no sense. You know, on one hand, you know, I can understand opposing the war, but not wanting people, and not wanting your brother who's over there getting hurt or anything like that, but you can't support the troops without supporting their mission. It makes no logical sense.
Well, I can tell you right now that the troops see through any excuse that they hear that, you know, well, I support the troops, but I don't support their mission. Well, you can't do that. You have to support their mission if you're going to support the troops, because they're there voluntarily. The bottom line is, if you're unhappy with the decision of going to war for whatever reason, then you have the ultimate possibility of changing that status of war by voting at the ballot box. And apparently America has not chosen to do that with this conflict. They re-elected George W. Bush in 2004 by a fairly handsome margin, about 3 million people. So, you know, the bottom line here, even though in 2006 you saw Congress and the Senate fall under Democratic control with the promise of disengaging our troops, it's 2008, and Congress and the Senate has continually supported our troops with money and material,
That
and
they have
not followed through on their promise to pull the troops out of Iraq.
Get involved in politics if they want to change the system. I grew up in the 60s where people were burning down buildings and such, and finally that was the final answer at that point, is for people who wanted to change the system to get involved in the system and change it from the inside out. If they don't like it, you got to change it that way. Otherwise, you're just pissing against the wind.
Well, I'd just like to add that we are the light and beacon to the world, and if we don't confront evil, no one's going to do it. And Americans have to realize that with our freedom comes enormous responsibility, whether you like it or not. And that's just what it is to be American and be the home of the brave.
It is our hope that anybody that comes down on September 1st to line the streets of St. Paul and show their patriotism to the United States, more importantly, their patriotism and loyalty to the men and women that are fighting in our military throughout the world, that we do it peacefully, that we do it with a smile, and that we receive that same type of dignity and respect from the anti-war protesters. I assure you that I will not tolerate anyone saying anything against a protester, because they have the right to speak their mind as well. Nor do I expect that any of the anti-war protesters say or do anything that would provoke anybody that's showing their patriotism to the United States. That is my sincere hope, and I do believe that it can be done in a peaceful manner.
All right.
It's an honor to have had a chance to address your audience, and I appreciate it. And thank you for coming
on. Thank you very much.
You're a good man. Yeah, let's torture.
I think the hardest thing for my family, because when I was a veteran, I served this country overseas, was when people who said we are invading Iraq way back in 2002 were told by smart and others that unmade products
Doing all right?
Whew, it's getting warm out here.
That it is.
Find out if my right car doesn't fail. I think they just keep going around in a circle. That's why it looks like there's so many.
And that's our show. If you want to find out more about the groups featured in this episode, go to lbsproductions.com, where you'll find links as well as the uncut versions of the interviews you saw me conduct in this episode. You can also subscribe to this show at our site, or you can go to the iTunes podcast section and search for Microscopic Life, and in either place you can subscribe to the show in high definition or standard definition formats. Now, music for this episode was provided by My New Mixtape, Virginia Coalition, Snakebeard Jackson, and our own Casey Nelson. So again, a very special thanks to those bands, and I want to mention that every month we're going to be featuring different musical artists, people that you probably haven't heard of yet. So please go to lbsproductions.com and check out the bands that were featured in the episode. And here's a quick peek at next month's episode.
Yield to me. Not while I still draw breath! A mere detail which shall be remedied shortly. Magic missile! Ah! Berserker! Ah! It's called LARPing.
And the day after that I got 25,000 views. Then the day after that I got 58,000 views. And the day, in 2 weeks we peaked at 280,000 views. And what happened is just people were just grabbing that link and passing it around and all this stuff. And then I started getting weird phone calls from like MTV and agents and all this other crazy stuff. And it just cascaded into something pretty big, so.
Again, thank you so much for checking out the show. My name's Terry Pounds, and this has been A Microscopic Life.